I'm here today with Christianne Roll, the Assistant Professor of Musical Theater here at Emory Henry. She just started, and we're here to talk about you. How are you doing?
Great. Very good so far.
Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so you grew up in a small town, kind of like Abingdon and Emory. So is that why you're here at Emory? Is that what attracted you to this place?
It definitely was one of the reasons why I like this school for sure. I've spent the past 10 years in New York City, and that's where I went for college and for grad school. And I did kind of miss the small town feel. So when I came to see Emory for the first time, I fell in love with it.
So you were in New York City before you came here?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What did you do in New York?
I came to New York City to go to NYU and Columbia for my education, but I was also a performer, so that's where you kind of need to be right now to be auditioning. So I spent a lot of time auditioning and performing in New York City too.
What kind of productions were you involved in?
I did some off-Broadway theater, but also a lot of the auditions that take place in New York, the jobs take you outside of New York, and mainly I started working for cruise ships, for cruise lines, which took me around the world. But the auditions for them are held in New York City.
That's really interesting. So what did you do for cruise lines?
I was one of their principal singers for several years, and so, you know, production shows, singing and dancing, and then the past few years I was their music director and was teaching their cast and teaching their singers and dancers.
Oh, that's really great. Oh, that's a really great opportunity for students to be able to be involved with someone who knows so much.
Sure.
You just finished Triumph of Love,
yes,
the musical here on campus.
Yes.
How did that go for you? Were you pleased with everything?
Yes, I was thrilled actually. Triumph of Love was a really difficult show. It's not very well known, and that's why, because the musical is really, really difficult to pull off. It was on Broadway in 1997. It was only on for about 6 months. It was a really difficult show, and our students pulled it off really, really well. They were well rehearsed. They were really ready for every rehearsal. So yeah, I couldn't have been happier with it.
Okay, so what do you think you bring to Emory and Henry that we didn't have before as far as musical theater goes?
Well, they've never actually had a musical theater, so I've heard an actual musical theater professor or person who is specializing in that area. Yet there was a major for people who wanted to study musical theater, so it's tough for those students. They either were getting music or theater, but musical theater itself is a very unique genre. So I think just basically with my experience I bring that. But the other thing too is it's such a changing profession, and students here, we're not close to New York City, we're not close to a big city, and I think that's what I bring. I bring the hands-on experience of what it's like to audition, what casting directors are like, what it really takes to make it in New York City. It's one thing to be here and to be in a show and to audition. That's one thing. It's a completely different game when you're actually pounding the pavements every day. So I think I really bring that practical experience to our students.
Well, that's really great. What are some of the tips that you give your students when it comes to that kind of stuff? Is there tricks of the trade?
Sure. I think the biggest trick of the trade is to go to every audition possible. If you don't go to the audition, you're never going to get the job. I had a friend who told me once that if you go to 60 auditions, you get 1 callback. And when you think about that, that's a lot of auditions. So there's mornings you're going to wake up and you're not going to feel like it, or you might feel a little under the weather, or you might have something you think is more fun to do. Auditioning is your job. So that would be what I would tell my students, to go to every audition they could possibly go to.
And that definitely paid off for you.
Yes, exactly. It eventually will pay off, yes.
Yeah. Okay. When you were a child, did you always want to be in musical theater?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Wasn't it every childhood dream of every kid in the world to be famous and an actress and everything? So what made it serious for you?
I never wanted to be famous. I mean, I went to NYU, and a lot of my classmates, they wanted to be famous, and that never really crossed my mind. I just loved performing, loved singing and dancing. But my mother was and is a singing teacher, so it was just what we did in my house. It was like my brother's a singer, my father's a singer. It's just what we do.
Do you believe that people need to have talent before they can learn to do stuff like this, or is it stuff that can be trained? Is it something that can be taught?
That's a good question. I think it could be. I think it is a little bit of both. Obviously, if you are born with a natural ability, it certainly helps. It's like with an athlete. If you already have an athletic body, you're going to get much further probably. But just being athletic or just being talented isn't enough. It kind of goes back to the drive. You know, if you really have the ambition and you really work hard and go to dance classes and act and listen to your teachers, you can go further than somebody who just has talent.
Okay, so you're saying anybody can do this if they're really pushed for it. Like, what are some of the things that they would need to do?
Definitely if you want to do specifically musical theater, you have to be a triple threat these days. You can't just sing, or you can't just dance like it was kind of in the 80s. Nowadays, for people of your generation, you have to be able to do all three. So lessons, classes, all the time.
Definitely. How is your family adjusting here?
Not bad, not bad. I'm here with my husband, and so far he likes it. You know, he was never a big fan of New York City and the craziness of the city, so he's really enjoying it, and he's a big football fan, so he likes being kind of down more in the South, so he's happy about that.
We'll definitely fit in around here with the football fans. I know I live with a couple of them. You said you had a little announcement to make, a good family one.
Yes, I am pregnant.
Oh, that's exciting. How far along?
About 5-6 months.
Oh, I love babies.
So the timing, it was certainly not planned. It was a big surprise once I got here, but now thinking about it, the timing has been perfect. It seems like a lovely place to raise a family.
Definitely. I think it's a very good place. Also, what are the new things that you're working on with the musical theater department for the future?
Sure. Well, one thing I did this year with the Triumph of Love musical was they've never had a live orchestra or live musicians accompanying them, and that was something I really felt strongly about, so we were able to incorporate some music students to actually accompany us. I hope to continue that with future productions too, just to make it more of a collaborative process and a kind of a bigger production. But besides that, I've just been really enjoying having the musical theater students in lessons just to build their repertoire and build their range so we can do better shows.
Well, that sounds great. What are some of the, have you looked into other productions that you'd like to put on here shortly?
Yes, we've been talking about some. I think the next musical will be next fall, hopefully around homecoming time, but the theater department is discussing that right now. We haven't chosen one. There's some differing opinions about that.
Oh, that's very
They're good opinions, but you know, everybody feels very strongly about what shows we should do here.
So as a new addition to this department, what do you think of the department as a whole and the students that are involved? Are they just, you know, are they horrible or are they awesome or do they have talent?
Awesome. No, they're wonderful. They're very talented, of course, or why would you be majoring? You know, why would you be majoring in theater and choosing that lifestyle? But the thing I have to say overall is all the students I have, they're very nice. They're very just lovely to work with, and I've just come from teaching in inner city New York City where some of my students were extremely challenging, and you know, it's good to be challenged, but these students that I have here, everybody's just really lovely to work with, and I really appreciate that.
And how about the people outside of that department? Are they
great?
Friendly?
Yes,
great?
Everybody's friendly. When I go to Kroger's, when I go to Target, everybody's very friendly.
Well,
yes.
Welcome to the South.